Imagine hiking alone in the woods, surrounded by tall trees and total silence. Then you feel it, a presence. Something big is watching you from the shadows. You hear a low growl and the crack of a branch. You can tell you're no longer alone. As you turn on your heels, what you see makes the blood drain from your face. Who or what owns the gigantic footprints in front of you? Now this is no imagination. Thousands of people have seen and felt this same terror. They say it's Bigfoot, and the evidence they left behind is too chilling to ignore. Could this be true? Is Bigfoot truly lurking in our forests? Is there any tangible evidence to back the claims of the humongous footed entity? We will find out together in this new episode of Secret Origins. Welcome. For decades, the term Bigfoot has made its rounds in modern-day society. Once you hear it, you recognize it. Although you've never seen it, you know what it is. Thanks to blockbuster cryptid movies, the enormous creature now has a personality. But what if we told you that there is more to Bigfoot than you thought? Yes. Let's begin with the roots. Where did these creatures and their name come from? In 1958, a strange entity visited California. In the woods of Del Norte County, a road contractor named Ray Wallace found absurd footprints near his work site. As you have guessed, these were no ordinary footprints. According to Wallace, these footprints were too massive to be human or even bear-made. In his astonished state, he made plaster casts with the footprints and showed them to whoever was curious enough to see. At the top of this curious list was the journalist, Andrew Genzoli of the Humboldt Times. As with every journalist's desire to create buzzing headlines, this reporter found a way to get his company's paper on the lips of every newspaper lover. How? He tagged the giant creature, Bigfoot, and the name stuck forever. Why not? What else can you call a creature with gigantic footprints, if not Bigfoot? As this name made waves in television shows and journalist reports, it gained its variations as well. Whether it was Sasquatch, Yeti, Yowie, Waki, or Bigfoot, they belonged to one class. But as intriguing as this variety sounded, it wasn't long before it started fading into folklore. This was until October 1967. On that remarkable month, researchers Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin ventured into the woods in search of Bigfoot. Guess where they chose to look for it? Right. Close to where Wallace found the weird footprints. Since Wallace was certain of the inhumane entity in the area, Patterson and Gimlin suspected that there were more lurking around. And when they embarked on this research, they were more terrified than excited at the results. On a cool evening in the depths of Bluff Creek, the researchers hit the jackpot, or so they thought. In a split moment, they saw a huge, lumbering creature walking steadily through a clearing. Overwhelmed by both fear and surprise, the researchers rushed to film a short sequence from a reported distance of over 80 feet. When this film was dissected by scientists, it was too grainy and unclear to understand. However, both the scientists, theorists, and researchers who watched the film managed to agree on one thing. The creature captured was neither human, bear, or any animal known to occupy that region. This sparked the question, was that Bigfoot in all its glory? To confirm this, we ask, was the foot as big as the one found by Ray Wallace? You bet it was. Measuring up to a stupefying 45.7 centimeters in length and 23.3 centimeters in width, the Bigfoot footprint was more massive than the researchers imagined. Roger Patterson dared to make a plaster cast of this discovery as his way of proving that Bigfoot does exist. But like you might agree, we are all doubting Thomases in disguise. Before long, questions began to rise to the surface. Questions like, what does Bigfoot really look like? Why are the reports about this entity vague and shallow? And more interestingly, Why does Bigfoot only have reports of massive footprints? Does the entity lack hands? With these questions plaguing scientists and researchers, there had to be answers, and it had to come fast. Three years later, an answer did come, this time through the hands of Ivan Marks. In the north of Colville, Washington, during the bright summer of 1970, Marks allegedly stumbled upon the handprint of Bigfoot. The size of these handprints will amaze you. Measuring 32.3 centimeters in length and 26.5 centimeters in width, the handprints of the creature were too absurd to ignore. Once again, they made plaster casts and stored them at the Arizona State Museum. But of course, the doubts never end. What if the handprint merely belonged to a man or woman in a gorilla suit? Or gorillas themselves, perhaps? To answer this, a physical anthropologist named Grover Krantz took it upon himself to fact-check the impression. Now, this is no ordinary anthropologist. Krantz specialized in studying the anatomy of Bigfoot's hand and foot impressions. This made him the most credible man for the job. His report. Many details found in Marks's handprint impression were too complicated to be fake. Put simply, anthropologist Grover Krantz certified the evidence as real. Can you imagine this? If you can, the Arizona State Museum is not on the same page as you. Underneath the featured Bigfoot handprint cast lies the catalog card, which reads, "This handprint is almost certainly not genuine." Almost. Certainly. Not genuine. Even with such a note, it's hard to tell which side they are on. However, the next set of evidence hardly plays around the table. This time, let's dive into the experiences of people who have encountered Bigfoot face to face. Do you wonder what Bigfoot looks like? More adventurously, how do they smell, think, and communicate? It's time to stop wondering. Keep watching to hear the wildest of accounts from the horse's mouth. On the 1st of November, 1879, California Daily Union paper wrote, "A strange creature, two hunters chased by a wild man in the Antelope Mountains." Wait, was Bigfoot just described as similar to a human? Let's find out. A week before the publication was released, two men, Peter Simons and John Gore, went hunting in Antelope Valley, California. As usual, Simons and Gore were focused on catching ducks and regular games till evening. Little did they know that a bigger catch awaited them. Hanging their hunting equipment over their shoulders, they took a shortcut across the mountains to their ranch. But as you know, shortcuts are the most dangerous. As the hunters walked around a chasm on their way, they heard a sound that halted them in their tracks. This was no ordinary sound. Rather, it sounded like a loud growl, animalistic and chilling to the core. With trembling feet and their game barely hanging from their hands, Simons and Gore turned around to trace the source of the noise. And with what they saw next, they almost passed out. Standing across a cliff from where they stood was a gigantic, hairy animal that also looked like a man. The sight before them was rugged and fierce, unlike anything they had ever seen. For a moment, the experienced hunters were at a loss. Was this an animal or a monster? This was no time to decide. Without hesitation, they pulled out their firearms and shot at the creature non-stop. However, they would later realize that this was a big mistake. As Gore's fire hit the creature on its arm, the horrifying growl grew louder and the entity suddenly turned on them. In a split second, the once fearless hunters turned on their heels. Dropping their rifles, Simons and Gore ran for their lives. Their goal in that moment was not to uncover who or what they encountered, but to survive, even if this meant having mere stories to tell to the Daily Union newspaper. But their encounter is one out of thousands of reported Bigfoot situations. In the summer of 1924, a terrifying occurrence grazed the front page of Washington's Oregonian newspaper. In a lonely canyon in the vicinity of Kelso, 5 men encountered horrid creatures which they tagged mountain gorillas. These men, Marion Smith, Roy Smith, Fred Beck, Gabe Lefevre, and John Peterson, were prospecting a claim about 46 miles from Castle Rock when they witnessed the worst. According to the men, 4 huge animals, estimated to be around 400 pounds each, walked towards them. You heard that right. The creatures walked erect, in man-like form, but looked nothing like humans. Not only was the appearance of these mountain gorillas terrifying, but their interactions were torturous all night long. Once they saw the strange creatures, they acted on reflex. Smith fired at one of the animals with his revolver, and Fred Beck followed suit, killing one of them in the process. But they didn't know. There was more from where the 4 wild creatures came. As though driven by a united force, the beasts stormed the log cabin where the 5 men camped. According to the prospectors, the wild creatures threw big and hard rocks at the cabin all night, while the men could only shoot their revolvers through the ceiling to try and scare them off. As Fred Beck would later confess in an interview with Roger Patterson, that was the longest night of his life. According to Beck, the creatures would attack them with stones and then quiet down after a few minutes. In a bid to adapt, he and the other men also stopped shooting whenever the noises died down. But whenever they resumed the chaos, Beck noted that they sounded like a bunch of horses running around there. And although they called their assaulters mountain gorillas, the description given by Beck suggests that they may have encountered Bigfoot long before the term even came to be. In his words, they were tall. They looked to me like they were 8 feet tall, maybe taller, and they were built like a man. Beck recounted that the chaotic attack on the cabin continued till the early hours of the morning. Only then did the creatures walk back into the shadows. The men fled the area, not bothering to take their supplies with them. No doubt, staying alive was far more important than any property, no matter its worth. If you think the Kelso Canyon story is terrifying, brace yourself. Worse encounters with Bigfoot have occurred. What's more, some date as far back as multiple centuries. In 1885, a disturbing event struck the calm city of Oregon, and it started exactly 4 years ago. 2 men went out to hunt in the mountains east of Albany, but only one returned. No one could explain it, but the second man, John McIntyre, suddenly disappeared without a trace. No one, including his fellow hunter, could tell what happened to him. However, this changed in 1885. A different set of hunters, led by Mr. Fitzgerald, ventured into the butte called Bald Peter in the Cascades. As the hunting crew searched for game, they were unprepared for the sight that suddenly appeared before them. A man who was as hairy as an animal and devoid of clothing was perched a few yards away from them. Not only did he look wild, but he acted wild. Before their eyes, this creature ate the raw flesh of a deer. As they approached it, the wild creature sensed their presence and fled quickly. Since this was the first case of such an occurrence within the vicinity, the inhabitants of the city began to wonder. Was the creature the same as the missing John McIntyre? If yes, what transformed him from a living human to an unrecognizable wild entity that fed on raw animal flesh? If not, then what was that creature? What if those hunters met a different version of Bigfoot without knowing it? As bizarre as the McIntyre story sounds, it shadows in comparison to the next. It's as though eyewitness testimony reached a new peak with each new confession. One such peak story is the Big Thicket Sasquatch. In the immensely dense woods of the infamous Texas Big Thicket, unspeakable savages roamed without reserve. Their roamings would have remained undercover if not for researcher and journalist Rob Riggs. In 2001, Riggs published a book titled In the Big Thicket, where he recalled the most absurd details about the monstrous Sasquatch lurking amid the dark greens. According to Riggs, his research began when he was only 10 years old. In 1950, the journalist, his older brother, and their grandfather planned to enjoy an overnight camping trip in the woods. But a few days before they could embark on their adventure, the rumors began. The residents of Hardin County whispered stories of a wild man wandering the woods with no clothes on. The creature was reported to be covered by hair so thick that its face could not be deciphered. In the northern part of the county, where the dense big thicket lay, the hairy creature thrived. This was the same place young Riggs was supposed to camp with his family. With his childhood dreams squashed by the rumor, he set out to uncover if there was any truth within. The result of this digging would leave you dumbfounded. After 30 years of deep research, Rob Riggs gathered data on multiple encounters with large ape-like animals in the same region. He achieved this by running a notice in the Houstonia paper, calling for stories of unusual sightings in the woods. To his surprise, his notice was flooded with letters. From these reports, a few stood out. In one, a teenage girl narrated how a giant ape chased her from a cemetery in the area. In a more stunning letter, a couple claimed that they saw Bigfoot face to face. As they loved up in their car parked along Ghost Road, the last thing they expected was a cryptid stopping by to say hello. In a shocking turn of events, Bigfoot jumped on the hood of the car, startling them out of their love haze. Perhaps the story would have turned tragic if the man did not have his shotgun nearby. Firing 2 shots through the front windshield, they managed to scare the creature away before taking their love escapade elsewhere. With these detailed testimonies in his hands and further research up his sleeve, Riggs was convinced. Perhaps the rumor he heard while he was 10 was no rumor. The big thicket Sasquatch was real. You've heard the stories. You've read about the massive hair, large footprints, and wild characteristics. However, this Bigfoot's next feature would leave you gaping. In 2014, Sasquatch expert Stan Gordon took the mic on the Coast to Coast AM radio show. On air, he discussed his Bigfoot research, the possibility of their psychic nature, and their connection to UFOs. What he revealed in this show was eventually tagged top-tier Bigfoot experience. According to Gordon, something remarkable happened in October of 1973. Witnesses said they saw a bright red UFO creeping in the pasture of a farm. Curious to know what resided in the craft, the group dared to approach the UFO. As they moved closer, a chilling sound pierced the air. It was strange, discomforting, and sounded like a baby's cry. Rather than back off, the group continued, determined to see what lay ahead. Not long after, they noticed 2 Bigfoot crawling around about 75 feet away from the UFO. One witness immediately shot a tracer bullet at the creatures, but he had no idea what was coming. The Bigfoot caught the bullet in mid-air. Undeterred, the man fired at them with live ammunition. Again, the bullets seemed to turn into dust when they reached the creatures. As though the chaotic shooting never happened, the creatures turned on their heels and sauntered into the woods. This encounter quickly sparked the query: is Bigfoot bullet resistant? If yes, why did they scurry off when threatened by some rifle-holding hunters in their testimonies? Or is there a different species that bullets cannot penetrate? It doesn't end here. If you think Gordon's claims are fictional, there is a similar testimony to back it up. Another Bigfoot investigator, Philip Rife, told the story of a 1959 encounter between Bigfoot and a Carroll County officer. The policeman was driving when a humongous creature with features befitting that of Bigfoot crossed the road in front of his patrol car. He jumped out of his car and tried calling out for Bigfoot to stop moving. As though it understood the officer's cries, Bigfoot stopped, turned, and walked towards the policeman. But the officer could not stand the sight before him. On reflex, he pulled out his revolver and shot furiously at the wild beast. But there was a problem. As he fired his bullets, The Sasquatch kept moving toward him, unfazed. Not a single graze from the bullets. The officer quickly realized it was time to save himself. In a quick sprint, he entered his patrol vehicle and retreated in a U-turn too bizarre to be done by a government official. There you have it. The recollection of Bigfoot encounters that are too real to ignore. Although scientists and theorists counter that these stories are mere figments of the witness's imagination, can we agree with them? If the accounts were indeed fictional, why are they in their thousands? Also, you must consider that the testimonials have occurred on separate continents, some in America and others in Australia. Surely, if it was a conspiracy theory, would it not be restricted to a certain geographical location? For an icing on the cake, the sightings were so massive that British UFO author Nick Redfern undertook the task of compiling them into the Bigfoot book, an encyclopedia we never thought we needed. But if you are to switch sides and liaise with the logic of scientists, you will realize a staggering truth. The presence of Bigfoot is still without concrete evidence. Aside from the vivid personal encounters and unclear films, the creature itself remains elusive. So, will you believe the reports of thousands who have seen the gigantic wild cryptid? Or will you side with the ever-logical scientific community? What do you think? Share in the comments section and remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Keep your minds open, and until we meet again,